welcome back, and time now to talk about our main topic for this morning show. And as we earlier mentioned in our intro, that we are going to discuss the problems, the difficult challenges and problems that are facing the issue of informal settlements here in Egypt, especially in Cairo, something that emerged lately in the past decade or so or more. Of course, Her Excellency, the Minister, is going to talk about in detail what caused or what are the roots of this problem, the informal settlements, and the issues and problems and dangers that are associated with this particular problem here in Cairo and outside Cairo sometimes. So we're very delighted to have with us Her Excellency Dr. Layla Iskandar, Minister of Urban Renewal and Informal Settlements. Good morning, Your Excellency.
Good morning to you. A very good morning to you, ma'am, and of course we are very much delighted and honored to have you in this episode of the Breakfast Show. As we were looking before going to air, we are going to call the slums the informal settlements just for respect of the dignity of people who are living there. But let's first define the word informal settlement. How we could say that this place or this region includes an informal settlement or a slum area.
In general, there are international definitions of the phenomenon. It's people who have built on land that they have acquired without legal documents, and they have constructed their homes not according to standard construction standards, and they have no title to the land, no documents that prove ownership, or to the buildings. The roads, there has not been any urban planning done for roads or services, and they squatted on the land and increased in number until they became a community.
To Your Excellency, of course, assigning a Minister for Informal Settlements and Urban Development is a huge step. It's a milestone that is taken in a very short time. Now that Egypt have a ministry for informal settlements, of course, I really feel sorry because you have a bouquet of problems and you have lots of challenges over your shoulder. So if you can shed some light on it and talk about the few maybe ideas on the top of your agenda that you have for the coming 3 years maybe, and for informal settlements in Cairo.
Sure. The main idea is that it's not the problem or purview of this ministry alone. Every ministry has a part to play in addressing the situation. Education, health, housing, roads, transport, social solidarity, culture. Everybody has a role. So our ministry, what's new about us is that we're going to play a very strong coordinating role among all these ministries. We first have to get on board with the same view and vision of what needs to be done in these neighborhoods, and then assign roles and then budgets. We have already begun talking to several ministries, and the way government works is that after you agree to work together, you have to sign protocols of agreement that define what each partner is going to do, and then you start putting an action plan and you assign staff and you get the ball rolling, plus of course you assign budgets. We have very strong relationships with NGOs because they work on the ground with communities, and with international donors as well.
Regarding the roots of the problem, as far as I understand that it started, I think, since the 1956 war, and with people who were relocated or unfortunately forced to leave their governorates, especially in the Suez Canal governorates, Ismailia, Port Said, and Suez. And then from this noble mission, I should say, to relocate those people who left their homes according to the war, it became a slum or unsettled, informal settlement. How can we deal with those people? I mean, they do have the right to live as normal citizens.
Sure.
How can we deal with them in a proper way, respecting their dignity and citizenship, in your opinion?
Sure. As you said, the problem dates back to way back, years before. And its roots were in an unbalanced economic development policy that disregarded Upper Egypt for the most part. By the way, if you look at the composition of informal settlement residents, largely they come from Upper Egypt because there was no opportunity there.
Yeah.
They're the ones who get on the boats and go to Europe or go to Libya and work as migrant workers there. So Upper Egypt needs to become the focus of our investment and economic policy. Otherwise, it's going to keep coming. You can't stop the influx. How do we get these people's their rights to dignity and a life of promise and opportunity? Well, the ones that are here already, you have to deal with a number of things. First, the work that they engage in, because they originally came here because of job opportunities, not because they were looking for a good school or a good hospital or. So jobs are on top of our list for strategies to address the situation. They are day workers, they are unskilled, they make very little money, hand to mouth, and thus live on the fringes of the economy. The other is, since they're here already, and there are millions of them, and they form one entire community, say, there's no sense in thinking of reverse migration for those who have been here for 40 years. Realize their kids were born here, and they've become Cairenes, the second generation. For those, in addition to improving their job opportunities and skills, you have to look at the urban setting of where they live. They live in unsafe neighborhoods where water and sanitation services primarily are lacking or are inferior in standard. They don't always have enough schools or clinics. There's very few transport networks that reach them. And the hygiene situation and garbage leaves much to be desired, so that the kids grow up in an environment lacking in dignity and leading to disgruntlement and crime eventually. It's very easy for a child at the age of 12 to be used as a drug dealer distribution person, because kids,
in many cases, to be a street child. It's another story.
Street children is a different issue a little, because it's not just poverty, it's also about broken families, broken homes, and violence in the home. So it's a complex issue, it's not just poverty. But to grow up as a child in a neighborhood where you have no place to play, where your school is not very child friendly, if you have one, where you have to go out to work to support the family, so you miss out on an education, you start from a very bad beginning. So these are the issues that a ministry alone cannot address. We have to work with all other partners. So for the issue of education, for instance, community schools are one aspect we're looking at, literacy classes for children and adults, school job opportunities and skills upgrading for those who are unskilled, in addition to the urban planning and urban upgrading of the neighborhoods.
Right. If we are to monitor the profile of the informal settlements here in Egypt as a whole, and let's say spot the places of those settlements all over Cairo and all over Egypt, could you talk to us in detail about the number of the informal settlements, I mean, all over Egypt, and also if the street children and the child labor are one of the problems that are associated, like you earlier just mentioned, that it's associated with this problem, but does it also fall with the ministry? I mean, is it as something to be handled by your ministry?
The definitions of informal settlements vary, but in general there is an international definition, and in Egypt we've adopted that and adapted it to the Egyptian reality. So we have what we call unsafe areas, those where people might die because they're living on the edge of a cliff or in a flood path or in a cave or land that is where they are at risk. Then there's people who live in Drea is an example of such. There are many others. Or if they live in structures that are made up of debris, garbage, tin cans and cardboard, plastic, that's still an unsafe. And those are the two main categories we're looking at to quickly construct homes, but very close to where people live currently, as long as it's unsafe land, and to provide them with the services that they need. Then there are other informal settlements, it's still within the definition of habitat, where people don't live in hazardous situations, but in unhealthy and unplanned situations that don't provide them with dignity or with the services they need. It's related to adults and children, not just kids, And so in our ministry, talk about children, for instance. Child labor is a very important issue we have to face. It's not just our ministry, because you work with the Ministry of Social Solidarity, with the National Council for Childhood and Motherhood, with the National Council for Health, with the Ministry of Health to provide kids with the services they need, with education. But as long as there is poverty in the family, you cannot force parents to keep their kids in school. So the Ministry of Social Solidarity, for instance, has a program now very much along the lines of the one implemented in Latin America, Bolsa Escuela, which is a fund, a grant that's given to the family in order to keep their kids in school. They get the money only if they keep their kids in school. It compensates them for withdrawing their children from child labor. And so they make the money by keeping the kids in school. So that's one program. It's not within our ministry, but it certainly serves the kids who live in the neighborhoods where we work. That's one. Street children is another issue. It's not just in informal settlements and slums. It's all over Egypt. It's linked to poverty, deprivation, family breakup, child abuse, a whole other string of, let's talk about numbers, for instance. With regards to these unsafe areas, we estimate that there must be about 364 of them all over the country. Of those, 80 to 100 are on public lands. And as such, we therefore have an easier way of getting in and allocating land and moving people. But the majority are dwellings that are owned by the people themselves. It's their own homes that they built many years ago and that now have cracks, are falling apart because the people are too poor to maintain their buildings. So the intervention here would not be to move them and relocate them and rehouse them and build, but to support them with credit lines, easy credit lines, that allow them to do their own upgrading. So on that count, we just passed a decree last Thursday in the cabinet to change the rules of mortgage laws. To make them more user-friendly for the poor who cannot put large amounts of money as down payments, who need longer periods of repayment, and who need low interest rates. So here, that's one area where our ministry worked very hard with the mortgage finance instruments, and they were very willing to change laws. So it's not always about building homes and relocating people. There are a myriad interventions that need to be undertaken to address the situation.
And when we are giving serious people some advantages or some encouragement that they can do miracles. Let's continue on this. And you have kindly mentioned, ma'am, your coordination and cooperation with the NGOs. I'd like also here to mention the big corporations and the private sector. According to the CSR, or the corporate social responsibility, which is now a global term, and fortunately it's implemented in Egypt. Of course, it's not only about charity or the charity events. It's about giving vocal training. It's about giving job opportunities. It's about taking care of the environment and trying to help or to give a hand. To what extent do you have this kind of coordination, not only with the NGOs, but also with the private sector?
We have a number of different partnership